Hear ye, 'tis time to discuss the 2023 Sire of Fort Myers candidates. As I'm sure you already know, the Sire of Fort Myers is both the most prestigious sports award in both Minnesota and Florida simultaneously. When the elders of Fort Myers were building Hammond Stadium, uncovering the earth, they discovered ancient scrolls, ancient words from the baseball gods themselves, declaring this site of hallowed ground where a champion must be crowned. Unfortunately, the scrolls were lost, and all memory of the Sire of Fort Myers was forgotten until I revived the award back in 2018 when Sire Ryan Lamar emerged as the very first Sire of Fort Myers. He was followed by Sire Ryan Harper, who had an amazing spring. Of course, in 2020, there was no spring training, but 2021 saw Derek Law win the Sire of Fort Myers award, but it was last year when the award truly grew in name and became world-renowned, when Sire Yohan Duran not only captured the Sire of Fort Myers, earned his way on the Minnesota Twins opening day roster, and became a galactic phenomenon on the mound. All right, so Sire of Fort Myers, getting down to business. If you couldn't tell already, we are here to do two things with Sire of Fort Myers. We are giving ourselves a fun storyline to follow for spring training. There's kind of a lot else going on, kind of a lot of nothing going on, too, in spring training, to be honest. And number two, most importantly, this is a reason for me just to completely goof around. That second part is probably obvious by now. So the most important thing to keep in mind when thinking about Sire of Fort Myers are the eligibility rules that, of course, were detailed in the ancient scrolls by the baseball gods themselves. So we cannot dispute these things. So there's two ways you can be eligible for Sire of Fort Myers. Number one, any player not on the 40-man roster is eligible for Sire of Fort Myers. These are guys trying to work their way onto the 40-man roster. And then number two, anybody on the 40-man roster who has never played in the major leagues. So these are guys trying to work their way into the majors. These are the two player populations that have the most to gain from spring training. There are position battles. There are jockeying for rotation spots to some degree. The Twins have a fairly concrete roster compared to some years, but there's still a little bit going on of that. But for the most part, a lot of guys kind of have their destination set in stone. They have their role pretty set. Doesn't matter what they do that much in spring. These are the players that have the most to gain out of having big spring trainings. And we've seen it since we've been doing the Sire of Fort Myers. You know, Ryan Lamar made the opening day roster for the Twins. Ryan Harper, who hardly anybody had heard of either of those guys. And they both made the opening day roster for the Twins. Derek Law didn't quite make the opening day roster, but he had basically a perfect spring and did pitch for the Twins later on in the year. And then Duran, obviously was a huge prospect and, brought it and showed everything that we continued to see all throughout the year. Was Yohan Duran from the get-go in spring training, pitched his way from basically not having a role into the opening day roster, into the opening day bullpen, and obviously just has progressed from here to really arguably one of the best relievers in baseball. Really added some extra prestige to the award last year, I feel like, Yohan Duran. So, for example, on the eligibility, Simeon Woods Richardson, yes, he's a prospect, but he is ineligible for Sire of Fort Myers because he is both on the 40-man roster and has made his major league debut if you missed it late in the year. However, Kyle Garlick, a guy who's been in the majors quite a bit, is eligible for Sire of Fort Myers. He is no longer on the 40-man roster, but he is in the system still. He's with the Twins still. So, this has also kind of become a fun way to relearn the roster status of some of these guys in this conversation as well. But the first population of players, I want to talk about them first. The guys on the 40-man roster who have not made their Major League debut. It's not a huge sample this year. Jordan Balazovic's one of those guys. Unfortunately, his spring has started off on not a great note. He is behind schedule because he got into some kind of an altercation and broke his jaw. Not great. Matt Cantorino is another guy who would have been eligible technically, but he is recovering from Tommy John surgery, so he's not going to be competing. Brent Hedrick, though, big left-hander. He is eligible for Sire of Fort Myers. He is a guy I suspect the Twins are going to take a good long look at. So Brent Hedrick certainly a name to be aware of in this. And then Edouard Julien, who's, coming off an incredible couple seasons in the minors, an incredible Arizona Fall League, a guy who, before the Twins added Donovan Solano, I was kind of thinking might be an outside shot at spending quite a bit of time on the Minnesota Twins next year. He still could. I'm not saying that that's out the door for him, but certainly Edouard Julien is, somebody who's going to be attracting a lot of attention, period, in spring training. And so other than those guys on the 40-man who have not debuted, also anyone not on the 40-man roster. Doesn't matter how much Major League time you have, anybody. And that includes quite a few interesting names, but I do want to say we're going to run through the non-roster invitees, the guys who are officially listed as non-roster invitees. But remember, there are tons and tons of players that see action in spring training games that are not technically on on either the 40-man roster or the non-roster invitees. Lots of minor leaguers will get action in these games, especially when they're split squad games. So we'll see some prospects you probably wouldn't expect to see, but two guys who are big-time prospects who are also officially non-roster invitees to big league camp are Brooks Lee and Austin Martin. There's no telling how long they'll be technically in big league camp, but really excited to see them get some opportunities. Hopefully they get a lot. But let's get into, I'm going to give you some sleepers, I'm going to give you some sentimental picks, and I'm going to let you know who my favorites are. First off, the sleepers. The sleepers, I think for pitchers, I'm going to stay internal. Internal guys the Twins have drafted and developed for these sleepers. And Cody Lawyerson is going to be like a sleeper pick for me for anything. He's a sleeper prospect I like. He's a sleeper pick in this set I like. I think they're going to get a really good look at him. Who knows how long he'll be in camp for, but, this is a guy I just trust to kind of rise to the occasion, and he's going to bring it. Brent Hedrick, I think, is also a good sleeper pitcher to keep an eye on. They have even more incentive to look at him, especially now that he's on the 40-man roster. So he probably has a leg up on Lawyerson, so if you have asked me to pick one, I'm probably going Hedrick. On the hitter side, there's lots of good options here, but I'm going to go with Michael Hellman, a guy who plays all over the diamond, so that's going to help him stick around and get lots of looks in camp. I think he stole 40 bases last year as well and hit well, so played a lot in AAA last year. So he's a really great organizational depth piece for the Twins. The sentimental picks that I have, these are the guys that maybe are the feel-good guys. And, any one of these guys, again, pretty much any of these guys are coming into camp as underdogs to carve out a role. But Randy Dobnak on the pitching side, just we all know his story. It's already such a feel-good story, and it's been such a wild ride that it would just be really cool if he comes back and, flashes what we saw of him earlier in his Twins career a bit and can win Sire of Fort Myers and turn his career back around. That would be a really fun storyline. And then the other one, Ryan Lamar's back. Ryan Lamar's back, baby. For the first time ever, we have a guy who could potentially become a two-time Sire of Fort Myers. I'm just going to be vibing, man. I'm going to be vibing when I see Ryan Lamar out there in a Twins jersey in spring training. Oh, yeah, Ryan Lamar, all the Sires of Fort Myers have a special place in my heart, as I'm sure you could tell by now. So I'm pretty excited to see what Ryan Lamar does. I might be the only one, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And then the favorites. This is a very unscientific thing. This is a gut feel, and a lot of times the favorites don't even become finalists in these things when I do these. But I do think the guy that stands out to me as the favorite on the pitcher side, and again, 3 of the 4 previous Sire of Fort Myers have been relievers, so this seems to be a good place to pick from. Oliver Ortega, 26-year-old right-handed reliever, was pitching with the Angels big club last year. He had a 3.71 ERA at the big league level. Some of the underlying stats certainly don't support that. But this guy he throws 96 miles per hour on average. And again, he pitched in 27 games with the Angels. That's a pretty impressive resume for a guy not on a 40-man roster. So Oliver Ortega really sticks out. On the hitting side, there are some other non-roster invitees that have some major league experience that look like, I bet you they're going to get lots of looks, lots of opportunities. Willie Castro and Tyler White kind of stand out to me among that group. But it's got to be Edouard Julien. It's got to be. It's got to be. Again, this guy has led the minor leagues in walks over the past 2 years. He was the Arizona Fall League Rising Star. Really should have been the MVP. He led the league in OPS. He was just incredible. Edouard Julien, he's starting to pop up on a lot of prospect lists, and it's kind of become even a fantasy baseball sleeper in some circles. So Edouard Julien is my pick for the favorite among hitters. If you make me pick between Ortega and Julien, I think I'm going to go with history and lean to Ortega. But, the tough thing with pitchers is one bad outing and you're pretty much out of the race. You're out of the running if you have one bad outing. You got to be basically perfect. The guys that have won it were perfect throughout the whole spring. Ryan Harper and Derek Law and Yohan Duran. So it's a tricky one to try to pick a favorite. It's going to be fun. It's going to develop. It's going to be we're going to do more weird stuff like this and goof around and watch all these weird players that we don't really know a lot about in some cases, like Oliver Ortega and Willie Castro and, my boy Ryan Lamar. So it's going to be fun. Baseball, man. Baseball's back on Saturday. Yeah, it's only spring training. Yeah, that's why we're making stuff up to have fun about. So that's what this is all about. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you to all the channel members. Here are the premium members getting ready for baseball. Cannot wait. Again, thanks for watching this video. We'll talk again soon.